Are you guys tired of Harman? Of course you are. We all are. Well, the melody is the opposite of that. It's colored as hell, but in the best way possible. If we look at the melody's low end and how it graphs, you're probably thinking, yeah, Jay's gone deaf. Because that's a lot of mid bass. To be more specific, that's almost 5 dBs more than the Fermats and a whopping 7 dBs more versus the Chopin. But it doesn't sound like it. It's colored for sure, however, it doesn't sound like a 5 dB bass boost. Maybe it's because Kiwiers are using their own in-house planar, but the low end does not feel bloated, muddy. It's warm, yes, but the vocals aren't wonky. For example, when I EQ the EA1000s to the same bass level as the melody, the vocals and the low end are evidently more bloated and congested, and it just becomes pretty much unlistenable with the timbre taking a huge hit after the EQ. This does not happen with the melody. The vocal and the mid-range again is warmer, but never so ruining the overall experience. In fact, I would argue it makes the listening experience even better with the extra triple air and sparkle combined with the mid bass. Because if I EQ down the mid bass on the melody to the Fermat's level, the sound becomes way too thin, too clinical, and the note weight is far too light. That combined with the two peaks at 7 and 15K makes the melody shrill sounding. However, with the added mid bass, the sound becomes musical, inviting, comforty, but still sparkly and impactful. I'm convinced this has to do with the planar or the planar driver the melody is using, and could only be pulled off with something like a planar, since if you try to replicate the same graph onto the Chopin or the Fermat that has dynamic driver or like a BA setup, it will just not work. Now, bass texture is obviously not as physical and tactile versus the EA1000s, not as resolving and impactful, but it doesn't feel as light as the other planars, and it's still overall engaging and not boring like the Nova or the Hexa. You're still going to get more bass out of the melody versus the Fermats, but the texture isn't as physical and airy. Even though the melody's got a good amount of mid bass and grasps a lot of mid bass, I wouldn't call this a bass heavy bass headset like the Rossfinch because of the extra energy in the upper mids and treble, which kind of balances out things more. It's also not solely focused on the low end, again because of the upper mids and the treble, so the melody to me is more of a V-shape IEM. Lower mids are again a bit colored. The mid bass does affect the vocal timbre as they're more full, they're warmer, which some of you may or may not like depending on your preferences. So it's not going to be as clear, open, and correct sounding as the Nova, the Chopin, or the EA1000s. With that said, it's still a very well-tuned V-shape and warmer set. The female vocals are still sparkly, airy because of the two peaks at 7 and 15K, and combined with the warmer low end, the melody strikes a comforting but still lively listening experience. Cymbal crashes are airy and the decay is prolonged, making the stage feel a bit more open but still relatively the same when you compare it to the Chopin and the EA1000. However, scaling wise, the melody does struggle at higher volumes and also can get a little bit sharp on some more energetic song as it gets fatiguing with the extra sizzle and the energy. Now, normally I would just put on a filter, but in this case it's not really recommended because there's already a lot of mid bass and any more would tip the balance to being too warm. Technical performance wise, the melody sits around the Hexa and the EM6L level. Even though it's got a good amount of treble detail, it does take a hit in the separation and the clarity because of the extra mid bass masking the lower mids and a bit of the vocals. Versus some of the Harman sets like the Nova, the Hexa, and the Sonus, the melody is more musical, it's more engaging, it's colored, and it's much more livelier. The low end especially, although again colored slams harder, is punchier, more pronounced, and overall more enjoyable with genres like hip-hop, K-pop, and even some indie music. The treble is also much airier, sharper, and has a sizzle to them. Female vocals are sparklier, and male vocals have more body and power behind them. Although the Harman sets will have better separation and overall smoother treble as well as better timbre, they are a bit safe and boring in my opinion. But if you are going to go Harman, you should just get the Chopin, or you can grab the Sonus at a cheaper price. Better comparison would be to the Performer 5, the Synclaw EM6L, and the Olina SC, where all three are slightly warm but not as airy and energetic and not as mid-bass centric versus the melody. They all have very similar technical performance where the others scale a lot smoother as well as the timbre being more natural, especially especially on the Olina SC, as notes are more grounded, with the holographic staging also going to the Olina SC as well. However, if I can only keep one out of the others mentioned, I would still take the Melody because it's got the most personality with its sparkly vocals and its warmness. It kind of reminds me of a more exciting Panda or P1 Max. On the other hand, if you're looking for something cleaner with less energy, the HeyDay or the Chopin would still be the better choice since they are better separated and have better clarity. It's not worth 2 times the price. I would still take the Melody over those two for enjoyment alone, but yeah, they are technically better. I would also take the Melody over the Quintet because it's very rare you get a well-tuned, fun, V-shaped, warm musical set that's not bloated and still sparkly with no treble roll-off. Very rare, especially under $100. But even with that said, the EA1000 is still at the top for me under $450. The timbre, the bass texture is just so natural that just nothing tops it. Now, if you want something cleaner under $100, the Clinical Red and the Sonus are still great choices, but again, kinda anemic and the opposite of having a personality. My pick for a cleaner set would actually be the EA500 or the Tangent 1 for under $100. They're still very engaging, but not anemic like the Clinical Red and the Sonus. For the bass heads, you're still better off with the Quartet, the Legato, or the Rossfinch, as they just slam harder with more focus on the low end. But that aside, the Melody has become my new favorite under $200. Highly recommended at mid-volume with genres like hip-hop, R&B, and some pop, K-pop, and J-pop. All the pops, all the bops. But yeah, the Melodies are a very fun set and spices things up from all the Harman sets that have been coming out in the past few months. With that said, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see everyone in the next video.